Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Kevin, and with me again is Jenny for another deep dive through history.
Always a pleasure to be back, Kevin.
This week, we're diving into, uh, an empire that kind of has it all.
Uh,
Gladiators, emperors, you name it.
oh, absolutely. It's
The Roman Empire.
the Roman Empire, yeah. It's hard to even imagine Western civilization without them.
No kidding. They're everywhere you look, even after all these centuries.
Mm-hmm.
But gotta admit, Rome, it's a big topic. Where do we even start with a deep dive?
You're right. It can feel, honestly, a little overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
All those emperors, all those wars, all those togas. Where to even begin?
Huh. So many tokens.
Right. So think of this deep dive like we're giving you a guided tour
Oh, cool.
through a museum packed with Roman stuff. We'll point out the best parts, the pieces that'll make you go, whoa, I didn't know that.
I like it. A curated Roman experience.
Exactly. And what better place to start than at the very beginning with, Romulus and Remus.
Okay, so we're talking 753 BCE, the mythical founding of Rome, raised by a she-wolf.
Yeah, come on, you can't get a more dramatic start than that. And that's what's so cool, right? Even if historians are still arguing about, what really happened,
Right.
those myths, they shaped how Romans saw themselves, their values, their whole worldview.
Yeah, it's like their own epic origin story.
Mm-hmm.
And to think, it all started with this little city-state hanging out on the Tiber River,
Right.
and they turn into this superpower that, took over the whole Mediterranean. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. But they were more than just conquerors. They built roads, set up these really complex legal systems, spread their culture everywhere they went. Their impact, it's unbelievable.
Okay, so from this kind of legendary, kind of shaky start, we get the Roman Republic, right, roughly 509 to 27 BCE,
Mm-hmm.
and they had, this whole system of governing themselves.
This is where things get interesting.
Yeah, what was so different about how the Roman Republic did things?
Well, one word, tyranny. They hated it.
Makes sense after, centuries of kings, right?
Yeah, exactly. They had enough of that. So they create this system. It's all about balance, dividing power between different groups, different institutions.
So no one person or group could become too powerful.
Right. Checks and balances, Roman style.
And that's when we see the rise of the Senate, which is a word we still use today, right?
Oh, yeah. Talk about a lasting legacy. The Senate, it was mostly made up of patricians.
The Roman aristocracy.
Yeah, the bigwigs. They advised the leaders, debated laws, basically ran the show. But, and this is important, it wasn't just the patricians calling the shots.
Oh, right. We can't forget about the plebeians.
Exactly. The common folk.
The everyday Romans, and they weren't afraid to stand up for their rights.
You got it. And that struggle between the patricians and the plebeians, it's a big deal throughout the Republic. The plebeians, they wanted a voice. They wanted their rights recognized. And they actually gain a lot of ground. They get their own assemblies. They elect officials called tribunes.
I've heard of those guys.
And these tribunes, they could veto laws. Right. If they thought a law was unfair to the plebeians, bam, veto power.
So there was this constant back and forth, this tension between the elites and, everyone else. Did that ever get resolved?
It was a balancing act, that's for sure.
Right.
The tension, it definitely caused some conflicts, but it also, I think, forced them to work together, to adapt. It made Roman society stronger, more resilient. But while all this drama was going on inside Rome, they were also expanding their territory.
Yeah, they weren't just sitting around debating all the time.
Definitely not. And that brings us to, one of the most epic chapters in Roman history, the Punic Wars. Rome versus Carthage.
Oh, yeah. The Punic Wars. I have to admit, when I hear Punic Wars, one image pops into my head. Hannibal. Hannibal and his elephants. Crossing the Alps.
Right. Talk about a power move.
It's just like one of those historical events that just sticks with you.
Yeah.
You know? This Carthaginian general just casually marching an army, including elephants over the Alps in winter to attack Rome. It's incredible.
And, even though he didn't capture Rome in the end, the fact that he got so close, that tells you something about Hannibal's, strategic brilliance.
Oh, yeah. He was a brilliant military mind for sure. But these wars, they weren't just about elephants and daring maneuvers, were they?
Definitely not. This was a clash of civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
Rome and Carthage, it was a fight for who got to rule the Western Mediterranean. And for Rome, winning these wars, that was a turning point.
So what made the Punic Wars so important? What was really at stake here?
Okay, imagine this. It's a fight for control of, everything.
Wow, high stakes.
Right. Trade, resources, power. Rome's victories, they didn't just make them top dog, they changed everything. But, and there's always a but, right?
Uh-oh, I don't like the sound of this, bud.
These victories, they came with a price, a big one. Think about it. These wars, they dragged on, right? And all that loot, all that wealth pouring into Rome, it wasn't exactly spread out evenly.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's like winning the lottery can have some unexpected downsides.
Exactly. And in Rome's case, it created this new class of super rich, mostly military leaders who made a killing, literally, on off these conquests.
So instead of strengthening the Republic, all this new wealth kind of backfired.
Big time. You start seeing this huge gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it breeds resentment, instability, the whole shebang.
And these powerful generals, they weren't exactly known for their, humility.
But let's just say they weren't shy about throwing their weight around. They had the money, they had the armies, and suddenly the Senate's looking a little less intimidating.
So the system that had made Rome so successful, it starts to crumble under the weight of its own success.
It's a classic tale, isn't it? And this paves the way for, well, let's just say things get a little Game of Thrones in Rome. Intrigue, power grabs, you name it.
Cue the dramatic music.
Yeah.
And this is where we see Julius Caesar make his entrance, right? I mean, the name itself practically screams Roman power.
Oh, Caesar was a piece of work, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Brilliant military mind, no doubt. His conquests in Gaul, they expanded Rome's reach like crazy. But
There's always a but.
all that success, it kind of went to his head. He comes back to Rome with this massive army, more loyal to him than the Republic, and you can guess what happens next.
He decides to make a few suggestions about how things should be run.
Let's just say he wasn't big on sharing power. Caesar gets himself appointed dictator for life.
Dictator for life. Yeah, not very republic-y, is it?
Not so much. And it doesn't end well for him. 44 BCE, the Ides of March, Caesar gets assassinated.
Brutal. Talk about a way to make a statement. So, wait, did the senators who offed Caesar, did they think they were saving the Republic?
Oh, they totally thought they were heroes, stopping a tyrant, yada, yada, yada. But in reality, they just accelerated the whole thing. Rome was like a chariot racing towards a cliff, and they just kind of greased the wheels.
So even Caesar's death couldn't stop what was coming. What happened next? Was it just chaos?
Pretty much. Rome's in a full-blown crisis. Civil war erupts again. Everyone's vying for power. And it's from this, cauldron of ambition and bloodshed that a new era is born, the Roman Empire.
And this is where Augustus steps in, right? Caesar's adopted son, if I remember correctly.
You got it. Augustus, or Octavian, as he was known back then. He plays his cards right. Learns from Caesar's mistakes, realizes that the Republic, it's over, time for something new.
So he's not just ambitious, he's also a pragmatist.
Exactly. He consolidates his power, declares himself Augustus, and boom, the Roman Empire officially begins.
What a shift, right? From this system of shared power, all about checks and balances, to one guy calling the shots. How did the Romans handle that transition?
Well, Augustus was smart. He knew that after decades of fighting, what people wanted most was stability. So he plays up this image of himself as leader who respects tradition, but also, you don't mess with him.
A firm hand and a velvet glove kind of thing.
Spot on. And it worked. He ushers in this incredible period, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For over 200 years, Rome experiences this unprecedented era of peace and prosperity.
200 years of peace after all that turmoil. That's insane. It's like unheard of in Roman history up to this point.
It's a golden age, no doubt. And it wasn't just about the lack of war, although that definitely helped.
Right.
Roman culture explodes. Think amazing architecture, incredible art, a flourishing economy. We're talking aqueducts, amphitheaters, the Colosseum. This is when Rome really becomes Rome.
Wow, the Pax Romana definitely earns the Golden Age title, huh?
Yeah.
But even with everything going so well, I imagine not every emperor was a saint.
Oh, you know it. Let's just say not everyone had Augustus's chill.
Right. Because when we think Roman emperor, one name always seems to pop up. Nero.
Yes, Nero. Talk about doing it for the gram. He was all about extravagance, living large, and not so much the good governance thing.
More like bad to the bone, am I right? Didn't he play the fiddle while Rome burned?
Okay, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but let's just say he wasn't winning any Emperor of the Year awards. He had a flair for the dramatic, a bit of a temper. Remember that time he had his own mother killed?
Yikes. That's one way to settle a family feud. Yeah, Nero's definitely the cautionary tale of what happens when power goes unchecked.
Textbook case. But in the interest of fairness, not all emperors were Neros, thank goodness. In fact, after him, we get a string of emperors who were actually, good.
Hold on, good emperors. After Nero, this I gotta hear.
Right. It does sound kind of unbelievable. But these 5 guys, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, they were known as the 5 good emperors, and they earned that title.
Okay, so what made them so good? Were they just, Super nice guys.
They were more than just nice, they were competent. They cared about Rome, not just about themselves. They focused on strengthening the empire, not just expanding it. They built roads, improved infrastructure, kept things stable. They understood that a good leader serves the people, not the other way around.
They sound almost too good to be true. Are you sure they weren't secretly planning to take over the world or something?
Hey, even good emperors have got to have hobbies. But seriously, they were a remarkable bunch. Hadrian, for example, he was obsessed with Greek culture, a real patron of the arts. He was also the brains behind Hadrian's Wall, that massive wall built across northern Britain to keep out those pesky barbarians.
Talk about leaving your mark on the world. So these five good emperors, they were a turning point for Rome, right? Everything was sunshine and roses after them.
If only. They definitely brought stability and prosperity, but sadly, they were more like the exception that proved the rule. And the last of the five good emperors, Marcus Aurelius. His death in 180 CE, let's just say. It marked the end of an era.
Here we go again. Something tells me it's about to get real again in Rome.
You're catching on. Remember those cracks in the facade we were talking about? Well, they're about to become a whole lot bigger.
Uh-oh. So what happens? Does Rome completely implode after Marcus Aurelius? Give me the lowdown.
Get ready, because we are headed into what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. And trust me, it's as bad as it sounds. Think almost imploded, and you're not far off, Kevin.
Well,
This crisis of the 3rd century, it was rough. Imagine, like, everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
okay, so we're talking full-blown disaster movie, Roman Empire edition.
Pretty much. But from the ashes of this hot mess rises a new leader, a guy named Diocletian. He takes over in 284 CE, and he realizes this whole one emperor for a giant empire thing, not working.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure for one dude, even an emperor.
Right, so Diocletian, he's like, time for a makeover, and he comes up with this wild plan, the Tetrarchy.
Okay, breakdown for those of us who slept through Roman History 101. What's the Tetrarchy?
Okay, imagine this. 2 senior emperors, they're called the Augusti, and 2 junior emperors, the Caesars.
So like an emperor quartet.
Exactly, and they split the empire. Each emperor gets a piece to manage.
Divide and conquer, but like in reverse.
Ah, I like that. It was a desperate move, but it kind of worked. Diocletian's reforms, they stabilized things, bought the empire some time, but it was more like a Band-Aid on a, well, you know.
On a crumbling Colosseum.
Exactly. The underlying problems, still there. The economy's a mess. Those barbarians are still banging on the door. It was a matter of time.
And I'm sensing that time is running out for our Roman friends. So what happens next? Who picks up the pieces?
Well, that's where Constantine the Great strides onto the scene.
Constantine. Now there's a name everyone's heard. Big player. Even outside of just Roman history.
Oh yeah, Constantine was a game changer. First off, he puts the empire back together, ditches the whole tetrarchy thing. But here's the biggie. He becomes the first Christian emperor.
Talk about a plot twist. Rome had spent centuries persecuting Christians, and now one of them is running the show.
Yeah, history loves a good irony, doesn't it? And Constantine's conversion, it changes everything. He legalizes Christianity in 313 CE with the Edict of Milan, which wasn't just about letting people worship freely. It was the first step towards Christianity becoming like the religion of the Roman Empire and eventually much of the Western world.
I mean, wow. Talk about a legacy.
Right. Constantine basically reshaped the religious landscape. He takes this empire, steeped in pagan traditions, and steers it towards a whole new spiritual framework.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it, but it proves that even empires, even ones as mighty as Rome, they have to change with the times.
Absolutely. Nothing stays the same forever, not even the Roman Empire. But even with Constantine's reforms, even with this new religious fervor, Rome's still in a tough spot.
Right. It's like they've got all these internal problems and those pesky barbarians haven't gone away.
Sadly, no. In fact, they're getting bolder. And this brings us to, well, what many folks call the fall of the Roman Empire, 476 CE. But we both know it's never that simple, is it?
Never is. History's messier than that.
What's the real story then? Did Rome just suddenly collapse one Tuesday afternoon?
More like a slow burn, Kevin. The Western Roman Empire, it didn't fall in a day. It was this gradual decline, this slow unraveling that had been centuries in the making.
So what was the final nail in the coffin? Was it the barbarians, the economy, or a really bad batch of Roman wine?
Let's just say it was a perfect storm of terrible circumstances. The Germanic tribes, they were done messing around. They wanted land, a place to settle. And the Roman army, stretched thin and worn out, they just couldn't hold them back anymore.
And then, bam, 476 CE, The last Western Roman emperor, a guy named Romulus Augustulus, which, talk about irony, gets overthrown by this Germanic general, Odoacer.
And that was that, at least for the Western Roman Empire. It was the end of an era. But, and there's always a but, right?
Always a but with history. Hit me with it.
The Eastern Roman Empire over in Constantinople, they were just getting started.
Wait, what? So even though Rome falls in the West, it kind of lives on in the East. Exactly. They become known as the Byzantine Empire, but they still saw themselves as Romans. They kept that flame alive for almost another 1,000 years. But that, my friend, is a story for another deep dive.
Okay, now I'm really curious. I'm already feeling another deep dive coming on. But for today, we'll have to leave it there. We've journeyed from Rome's mythical beginnings to its rise as this superpower, from those glorious days of the Pax Romana to its eventual fall. It's been a wild ride.
And it shows you just how much the Romans, even after all these years, still impact us, right? Our laws, languages, art, even how we think about like the whole world. That's Roman influence.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, what will our legacy be? What will people be saying about us centuries from now? That's something to think about, isn't it?
Definitely something to ponder.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our Roman adventure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you soon for another deep dive into history.